My name is Chantika. I'm treasurer of HEDS, in charge to coach you guys for today's weekly practice. And tonight we're gonna talk about arguments 101, to be precisely analysis process and using examples and link back. But before jumping to the practice session, I want to remind you guys that I expect this weekly practice. It's not just me that are going to coach you, but I also expect maybe my fellow members that are also coach me. So kita sama-sama belajar. Jadi if you guys have any additional statement that you want to deliver, please do so. Okay, so without any further ado, let's just jump to the practice. First of all, before we understand the analysis process and using examples and link back, first we need to understand the common mistakes that often occur in building arguments. Just so you guys can avoid in doing that when you build your arguments. First is I always encounter the arguments from newbies, for example, that is really hard to follow. What I mean by hard to follow is that their argument is kind of jumpy. For example, jumpy that when the argument one is not complete to be elaborated, they jump into the second argument. And that is kind of hard for the educators to follow. Second is when they back and forth to the first argument and the second argument. For example, if they do not yet complete the first argument, then they move to the second argument, and then they back to the first argument, and then they back to the second argument. And I always encounter this from the newbies, and I hope you guys can avoid doing this, because the educators is having a hard time to follow your flow. So before you jump into the next argument, make sure you fully or completely elaborate your first argument before jumping to the next one. So second mistake that is common, and the second mistake that is always happen is spending too much time in explaining meaningless details or examples. Okay, so in this tonight's session, I want to give a motion that is going to be an example until the very end of the practice. It is this house will not consume any arts that created by artists that committed immoral acts. Ini mungkin kalau teman-teman ikuti HSDC, ini motions HSDC. And waktu itu di one of the debaters spend too much time in explaining meaningless details or examples. Jadi dia jelaskan on how boycotting these artists that committed crimes, how boycotting these artists is going to be negatively impact the GDP, which is really a kind of example yang tidak agak-agak meaningless, and they spend about 2 to 3 minutes in explaining this. Jadi it was such a waste of time. Waktunya itu dibuang just to explain meaningless details or examples. Kan bisa dipakai waktunya itu to elaborate important statements, important arguments. It is much better rather than explaining meaningless details or examples. Second is less elaborations. I encounter the debater newbies itu when they state an argument, their assertion is already good. It's already good, tapi you cannot just say things like this thing is problematic, this is unjustifiable, but you do not tell me why it is unjustifiable, why it is problematic, and if it is problematic, then how big the harm that is going to cause. So that kind of elaborations that actually one of the most important thing in a speech. So if you guys come up with an argument, make sure to elaborate to elaborate your argument until the very end of your speech. So the loopholes is going to be minimized. This I'm going to explain this later in the next page, next slide. Okay, so there's actually two ways to analyze or to elaborate. First, you can go deep, or second, you can go wide. First is go deep. By what I mean by go deep is you can explain one process to prove one statement. For example, if you want to say consuming their art can prolong their immoral acts, you can say that consuming their art, meaning we support them financially. They can use the money to bribe the officials, and then if they bribe the officials, then they can get away from it. They do not charge any. They do not get. They didn't get into the prisons, or they didn't get charged of anything, and also thus it cannot deliver a deterrence effect to the artist. Then they will continue to do immoral acts. This is the flow that adjudicators expect. For example, also if we support them financially, they can use the money for buying guns, for example, drugs, and etc. And by giving them, unless you can go deep, and if you can, for example, if we use this argument, bribery by guns, you can explain this until what I just explained. So your argument is can be given credit. Second is go wide. You instead of like using one process, you can also use multiple process to prove one statement. For example, consuming their art can prolong their immoral acts. Consuming their art, it can negatively influence so many actors. Maybe by these motions, most newbie debaters will say that, oh, it will negatively impact their fans. Their fans will follow this artist to do criminal acts, to do immoral acts, and so on and so forth. But actually, there are so many more actors that are going to be negatively influenced. This is a wide range that you guys can explore. For example, if fans fans are emotionally connected to the artist, as it is most likely for them to follow what the artist does, and this is why we cannot consume consume the artist's arts. Also, we need to boycott them, and so on and so forth. Also, labels, if we keep consuming their arts, labels can push their artists to create more explicit arts, to create more immoral arts, because it gets attentions. Regardless the intention is bad or good, if it gets a lot of attentions, then the labels can push their artists to create more that kind of arts. So because it can it can create more money, right? And other artists also, it is negative impact other artists, because the other artists can be influenced to do the same thing, because the artists know that it gets a lot of attention. That's why they want to do the same thing, and this can also prolong the immoral acts, because there's no actors then that receive deterrence effect by it. Jadi seperti itu. But it is so much better if you also go deep and go wide. If you have wide range of examples or actors or details, and you explain it deeply, and you explain each examples or each details or each actors deeply, then it will be so much better. Apa? Karisma ya? Okay. Next itu elaboration or analysis. Okay, when you build your argument, when you come up with a good assertion, then you have to elaborate your assertion, right? You have to explain why it is your assertion or arguments is true, or why your solutions, why your assertion or argument is true. As I said before, you cannot just say that the problem is problematic, the problem is very harmful, but you don't explain how it is harmful, how it is going to be negatively impact to many people. So you need to explain why it is unjustifiable and why it is problematic. And of course, if there's a problem, of course, you also have to come up with a solution, right? And you have to explain why your solution or alternative need to be implemented to counter the problem that already exists. So, so when you come up with solutions, you also need to explain why your solutions that have to be implemented dan bukan solutionnya opponent. And this is very important for you guys to do so. Third, sorry, why is it exclusive? Third is, why is it exclusive on your team's case? Of course, if implement. Now, you have to explain why those benefits or those profits is exclusive on your team case. Why it can be only successful with your proposal. Nah, ini juga common mistakes di debate, karena kayak sudah banyak debate speakers yang explain tons of benefits, tapi dia tidak explain the likelihood, the feasibility and the feasibility, kayak alternatif itu untuk diimplementasikan, seberapa possible, seberapa alternatifnya kalian itu diimplementasikan, dan seberapa possible the benefits we can receive. Jadi kayak even kalian mention a lot of benefits, tapi kalau kalian tidak explain likelihood-nya, feasibility-nya, I guess itu susah dikredit. Jadi it is very important before you mention the solution or the solution or the alternative, make sure itu pikirkan juga likelihood-nya, kayak seberapa mungkin alternatif kalian itu untuk diimplementasikan. Okay, also if you want to elaborate more, you have to prove who are going to be impacted, whether it is negatively or positively impacted. Jadi mungkin semakin banyak stakeholders semakin baik ya yang bisa dijelaskan, dan harus deep juga seperti yang saya jelaskan tadi. Terus setelah itu ada comparison. You have to explain why your solutions or benefits cannot happen in the opponent's case. That's why your alternative is the only way yang bisa counter the problem. Jadi di sini kalian betul-betul pokoknya glorify solution atau benefits-nya tim kalian. Terus jelaskan juga kenapa ini tidak bakal terjadi di case-nya lawan. Makanya case lawan itu tidak bisa diimplementasikan. Seperti itu. And second is your solutions and benefits might happen in the opponent's case, but with your scenario, the benefits are going to be much better. Jadi di debat itu tidak selalu harus kita denial sama kayak best scenario-nya lawan atau positive case-nya lawan. Kita tidak selalu harus denial sama case-case positifnya lawan. Tapi you have to prove why why benefits-nya lawan itu tidak sebaik benefits-nya kalian. That's why your case or your alternative yang harus diimplementasikan. And this is better sih untuk dibawa supaya educators lebih yakin untuk give credit to you. The last thing is worst case scenario. So kita juga harus realistis untuk membawa argumen. Jadi tidak melulu best scenario yang kita bawa, tapi kita bisa juga main di worst scenario, di mana kayak we explain the possible negative effects of your argument and explain why this negative impacts can be overcome, bisa dikendalikan, bisa dihadapi, and are still better than following the opposing team's proposal. Jadi kayak you agree kalau misalnya proposal kalian diimplementasikan, it might be negative effects yang timbul. Tapi kalian juga harus jelaskan kenapa negative effects itu sebenarnya tidak apa-apa, bisa diatasi, dan sebenarnya masih jauh lebih baik daripada worst case scenario-nya lawan. Jadi seperti itu yang harus kalian bawa di elaboration. So I expect you guys take a screenshot karena penting untuk teman-teman ingat for your next tourneys, for example, for your next debate. Okay, so I assume everyone is already take notes atau screenshot. Okay, I'm moving on to using examples. Okay, using examples is important to support or strengthen your argument. Examples help the educators to visualize your argument, thus make your case feasible to be implemented. But keep in mind that do not make examples as your main case. It's just for the additional information, the additional tool that can support your argument. Okay, this is where you support your argument with study case. Kalian provide examples yang sudah terjadi, tapi kalian juga sebenarnya bisa bring examples dengan making up scenarios atau dengan scenarios teman-teman yang pernah mungkin teman-teman alami dan kalian bilang it is okay, tapi I actually do not recommend it, dan lebih bagus sebenarnya kalau teman-teman bawa example with study case atau yang sudah memang pernah terjadi. Okay. Terus ini kita bisa lihat example-nya. For example, government is consuming their art is dangerous because it promotes criminal activities. For example, Travis Scott continuously advocate rich culture in his album, merchandises, and etc. And for example, in 2015, Travis Scott encouraged their fans to jump over the security barricades, and he got away with it. He didn't get charged of any of the atrocities. And yeah, until this year, 2021, the atrocities happen again in the recent Astro World concert when multiple of his fans died because Travis encouraged their fans to jump over the barricade. It is not safe, which is against the law and break the law. So it is this is how you bring the examples. Nah, terus for the oppositions, maybe if their case is their art is not always represents the artist's behavior, thus we still can consume their art even though the artists commit crimes. For example, Justin Bieber with his criminal records, drunk driving, drag race, has nothing to do with his music. His music is all about love, heartbreaks, even his love of God. So this proves to you that actually Justin Bieber's legal status have nothing to do with his music. Jadi kayak ini proof examples, ini support argumennya teman-teman yang their art is not always represents the artist's behavior. So it is still justifiable to consume their art. Seperti itu. Jadi saya harap teman-teman sudah bisa lihat bagaimana examples is actually helping your argument. Karena sebenarnya example juga agak penting karena just to help the educators to visualize the feasibility of your statement, also to prove your statement if it's true or not, and etc. etc. Okay. Is link back. Okay, link back. This is your last chance to convince the educators by summarizing the important statement that your team has brought. So you have to make sure that the educators highlight your important arguments. So maybe, for example, you can say that our team managed to prove why it is unjustifiable to consume their art, to consume the artists who have committed crimes, arts, by delivering 3 layers of explanations, which are first, blah, 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 second, blah, 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 third, and blah, blah, blah. Thus we deserve to win this motion. Also, we have proven the feasibility of 2 alternatives, which are first, this alternative, second, this alternative, that can counter the problem, thus we should win this debate. Jadi kayak link back is bisa dibilang kayak menyimpulkan apa yang teman-teman sudah bawakan and also re-mention the important statement just to make sure that the educators count dan tulis itu argumen pentingnya kalian, and also just to make sure that the arguments the educators remember your important statement, jadi kalian bisa dikredit seperti itu. Okay, for elaboration or analysis using samples, link back, I guess that is all. I know there's so many loopholes, but I expect juga dari teman-teman members dari kayak seperti Dava, mungkin Karisma, Nazal yang sudah have good records in debate, mungkin bisa juga sharing tentang how you build your arguments, bagaimana kalian caranya analysis. Tapi one hack from me is that if I want to come up with an argument, I always question that argument. Jadi kalau misalnya saya berpikiran satu ini, I guess this is problematic. Terus kenapa kalau problematic? Jadi kalau misalnya saya sudah jelaskan kenapa ini problematic, dan terus siapa-siapa yang bakalan ke impact. Nah, dan terus saya sudah jelaskan kenapa siapa-siapa lagi yang ke impact, saya jelaskan lagi emang seberapa besar impact harmnya atau impactnya. Jadi kayak I always questions my arguments until it has less loopholes, atau kalau bagusnya it has no loopholes. Jadi kayak bakalan susah untuk diribat sama lawan. Seperti itu. That is all for me. Kalau misalnya any questions, any additional statements, itu bisa banget ditanyakan langsung by open your mic or in the chat box. Thank you. We will help. Okay, I guess Eka is okay, Kak, silahkan.
Okay, thanks for the chance. Kak, is it possible to analyze our argument first in deeply, then go wide? Go wide. Thank you.
It is very possible if you analyze your argument. If you want to go wide or go, it is actually much better than just using you want to go deep or you want to go wide. I highly encourage you guys to go wide to go wide, you provide wide range of examples, wide range of arguments and reasonings and actors, and you also go deep into each stakeholders, into each arguments, into each reasonings. Thus, the educators can be more convinced, and your arguments is also it's also much better. So yeah, it is possible. If you want to go wide or you want to go deep, it is actually much better daripada salah satunya, seperti itu. Clear, Eka?
Okay, Kak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any more questions?
Halo, audible Kak?
Audible.
Ekoi atau tidak?
No. Clear.
Oke. Sebenarnya ada Kak, kayak kasih tambahkan sedikit, mungkin kasih tips, tapi tunggu Kak, kayak kasih Kak dulu 1 menit untuk share screen.
Oke.
Oke. Wait. Nah, ini toh kan tadi Kak, Kak Cesa bilang kalau kau mau bikin argumen, kayak make sure you have to be critical towards your argument and kayak question gitu. Ini juga kayak ingat Kak dulu pernah waktu latihan IFED 2021, ditanya Kak sama coach kalau ada kayak semacam metode atau framework you can use to question your own argument. Itu pakai 5W tambah 1H. Jadi kayak tiap-tiap argumen tuh kayak tanya, kayak kau tanya kira-kira apa yang kau mau solve, who, itu kayak misalnya who are going to be impacted by this, atau siapa yang bakal kayak act dalam ini certain policy or certain proposal. Terus kayak misalnya why this is very important, kayak gitu ya. Contohnya tuh kayak begini. Let's say for example motionnya itu, this house would strictly limit media companies from publishing news on terrorism. Say for example argumennya terus say for example ini motionnya dan kalian go off toh. Nah, firstly in order for you to come up with arguments, tanya dulu kira-kira kayak what are exactly the interest of terrorists, apa yang mereka mau. Terus kayak karena kan kita juga mau ban media companies toh, bukan not ban sih, tapi strictly limit. Jadi kayak kalau juga bisa jelaskan kayak bagaimana how media companies directly serve the interest of the terrorists. Terus who are the general public that are affected by this coverage of terrorism, dan kenapa why this interest is so harmful to the extent nggak bisa kita kasih media coverage on it. Nah, say for example toh argumennya itu we want to prevent them to spread fear to the society. Nah, tanya dulu kayak kira-kira jangan langsung assume kayak mereka jangan langsung bilang kayak kalau media begini-begini itu spread fear. Enggak, jangan langsung begitu. That's quite assumptive. Yang seperti Kak Cesa bilang toh. Jadi how you can say for example pikir dulu kayak bagaimana sih in status quo media companies spread fear to the society. Nah, seperti yang kalian bisa dilihat kayak di screen toh, mereka itu cuma mau kayak bikin sensasi, tapi mereka publish news that are scary as fuck, tapi kayak masih spekulatif di sebenarnya apa yang terjadi, atau they exaggerate the degree of the threat, padahal threatnya biasa aja tapi they make it as if ISIS is already infiltrating the country. Terus mereka buat konten-konten yang clickbait, yang kayak misalnya headline-nya lebay, gambar-gambar yang sensitif toh. Ya untuk buat sensasi, untuk anu saja, untuk kayak increase ratingnya mereka. Terus biasa juga kayak media companies, they tend to be biased and only one-sided. Mereka actually this is debatable, tapi kayak there's a principle that says that kalau sebenarnya teroris itu they have their own grievances, dan sebenarnya kayak media coverage itu mereka always portray terrorism in a bad way, tapi mereka never empathize on the issue of terrorism, never portray that terrorists themselves have grievances that need to be known by general public, always portray them as psychopaths that should be killed immediately. By the way, this is not an argument to justify terrorism. Okay. Terus when you have answered the question, kau bisa identify the conclusion. Jadi kayak media companies, in order to get profits, they do whatever it takes by creating irresponsible, biased, and subpar quality of the news to the people. Nah, siapa yang ter-affected by this? General public, majority white people who consume mainstream media. Terus apa-apa saja itu mainstream media. Mainstream media itu banyak dari platform, contohnya TV, medsos, HP, dan kawan-kawan. Terus seberapa impactful itu mainstream media? Karena mainstream media has good reputation in the eyes of the public. Mereka conceive kalau they are convinced that mainstream media is a trustworthy resources. Jadi kayak it affects them karena ada asymmetry of power between mainstream media dan orang-orang, karena orang-orang itu really rely on mainstream media. Nah, terus question me lagi kayak why is the fear or paranoid that is spread is so harmful? This fear creates social discrimination, Islamophobia, anti-immigrant movements, hate crimes. It harms the economic activity of certain region that is affected by terrorism activities. Terus citizens vote for bad policy because of the fear. Karena kan biasa kayak apa? Biasa toh kayak ada media-media yang itu affiliated with the opposition party. Jadi mereka memang sengaja kayak bikin news yang news yang untuk bikin cari sensasi. Jatuh-jatuhkan pemerintah incumbent government. Jadi kayak itu bisa this is one of the harms of yang kalian bisa explain kalau kalian mau bawa ini argumen. Terus lastly bilang juga kayak why is the harm not solvable in opposition? Nah, kenapa tidak solvable ketika harm-harmnya ini? Karena seperti yang tadi saya bilang, kayak mainstream media itu very impactful dan memang besar influence-nya because they are conceived as trustworthy, karena mereka paling besar kapitalnya. Even if opposition wants to say ada media-media kecil yang yang independen, mereka bakal tetap their power or their influence will be diluted by the mainstream media yang memang sudah established memang nih. Kayak gitu sebenarnya how you can ini contohnya kayak bagaimana kalian make sure argumen-argumennya itu kalian tidak jumpy dan tidak yang assumptive. Jadi betul-betul hashtag persuasif banget Ki. Iya, itu aja saya kayaknya. Thank you Kak.
Thank you Dava untuk insight-nya yang sangat-sangat insightful. Oke, saya share screen lagi ya. Oke, jadi ada pertanyaan dari Yudi itu, Kak, kalau kita buat argumen, biasanya kita disuruh kasih kan layer-layer. Bagaimana sih cara efektif untuk buat layer argumen, Kak? Kalau seperti tadi kan Dava juga sudah share screen argumennya, terus ada 3 layer kalau tidak salah tadi. Nah, ini juga saya bisa kasih contoh kalau misalnya saya mau bilang kalau ini immoral acts bakalan banyak kalau misalnya kita keep consuming the art created by those artists yang commit immoral acts, itu bakalan banyak sekali negatively influence so many actors. Jadi pertama saya jelaskan dulu ini, kayak tadi Dava pertama itu bilang kalau ada karakterisasi pertama mainstream media and so on and so forth. Ya memang kayaknya penting sekali itu karakterisasi. Nah di sini kalian bisa karakterisasi dulu kayak ini artis kan, ini artis have kayak huge fandom. Nah fandomnya itu terdiri dari anak-anak, underage sampai dewasa, and ini artnya di-consume so many people. Nah, kalian sudah dramatisir itu. Nah, this is very dangerous karena kayak bakalan banyak ini orang yang ikuti what the artist does kalau kita keep consuming and normalize their immoral acts. Nah, terus layersnya adalah you say that how keep consuming their art can negatively influence so many actors. First layer, how this can negatively impact fans. Yang sudah saya jelaskan tadi. Second layer itu labelsnya seperti apa, how they can push their artists to create more immoral arts yang bisa membahayakan audience. Terus third layer is how other artists can also influence to do the same thing. Jadi kayak terus kalian bisa juga jelaskan nih bagaimana caranya each stakeholders itu influence. Jadi sebenarnya layers seperti itu. Mungkin bisa ditambahkan sama Eva kalau mau menambahkan how to effectively build layers. Tapi so far that was all for me. Thank you, Yudi. Is there any more questions? Okay, so I guess there's no more questions or additional statements. Jadi, thank you so much guys yang sudah keeping up sama tonight's weekly practice. Sekarang kita ada you guys have to create arguments sesuai yang sudah saya jelaskan tadi strukturnya. Terus kali ini teman-teman wajib untuk bikin argumennya, karena kalau tidak teman-teman tidak kehitung absennya. Jadi motion yang kita pakai itu, this house would, saya tulis di chat box, this house would not consume any arts created by artists that commit immoral acts. Oke, jadi teman-teman bisa lihat motionnya di chat box. Itu teman-teman deadline-nya besok jam 10 malam. Argumennya pakai argumennya PM atau government. Is there any questions regarding motions?
BTW, enggak, ya, kayak clarify kalau tuh kasih stop recording.